Welcome, everybody. So today I'm going to tell you the story of Jill and Jane, two sisters who ended up at very different points in their retirement after starting out at the exact same spot. Now, the premise of this story is when the success of your retirement is based on something you can't control, which is timing the market, you're always going to be at risk. I'm sure many of you will be able to relate with this scenario, but this is a real situation. This could really happen to you. So what we're trying to teach you is a better, safer, more secure way to make sure your retirement is exactly what you planned for. Now, before we jump into the story, let's cover a few important terms. Sequence of returns. Now, sequence of returns is simply the order in which returns are realized by a retiree. The consequences of bad sequence of returns, especially early in retirement, can mean premature depletion of one's portfolio. When you're withdrawing funds at the same time that your portfolio is losing value, you can expose yourself to what we call sequence of returns risk. Now, there are two fundamentally different income philosophies, probability-based and safety-first. Those favoring probability-based will rely on the belief that the markets will provide large enough returns over time to compensate for the negative returns in the market. They believe over time, your returns will work out and everything will be okay. Let's be honest. How often do you see that happening to the people that you know? Now, however, this philosophy leaves folks with both market risk, which is sequence of returns risk, and longevity risk, which is outliving your money. Two things I'd rather not deal with. Now, the safety first mindset believes at least the essential costs of living expenses should be covered by guaranteed income from Social Security, pension, and fixed income annuities. These income sources are guaranteed and eliminate both sequence of returns risk and the risk of outliving your retirement. Now let's hop into the story. Jill and Jane are sisters who are 3 years apart in age. Besides the age gap, all their other circumstances are the exact same. The only difference is Jill was born 3 years too late. You see, Jane retired with $1 million in 1996, and Jill retired 3 years later in 1999. Now, Jill had an equal amount of savings as to her older sister, that $1 million. Unfortunately, Jill fell victim to something she knew nothing about, sequence of returns risk. Now, both sisters had heard on the radio that they should only invest in low-cost index funds because that's how you pay virtually no fees. They were both excited about the big returns in the US stock market. At that time, everybody was out there making money. When Jane retired in 96, she began using the 4% rule. Now, this rule had become really popular in the 1990s and was talked about on the radio, in magazines, as a safe way of not running out of money for 30 years or so. So Jane started taking income of about $40,000 and increased her withdrawals by a 3% constant inflation rate each year to keep her purchasing power equal to that of the inflation. Now, Jane retired at an excellent time. She had very good returns in 96, 97, 98, and 99. Of course, Jane suffered, like most everyone else, between 2000 and 2002, but starting with those first 4 years, and even considering 7 years of increasing withdrawals, her account never dipped below that $1 million mark. And during the recovery of 03 through 07, her account actually grew to nearly $1.5 million while continuing to take an income that had grown to over $55,000 a year at that point. Now, despite her income growing to about $68,000 a year in 2014, suffering through the 2007 and through 2009 bear market, which of course you know was the worst since the Great Depression, her account was still worth nearly $1.5 million. Jane took out over $1 million in withdrawals over those 19 years, and her account actually grew by 49% on top of that. The sequence of returns happened to be on Jane's side. Super lucky Jane, which is why we say, of course, it was just luck. No skill or advanced planning. Jane got lucky with her timing. Now, Jane ended up in great shape. She should be financially secure for the next 10, 15, or even 20 years. She will have no income worries and real peace of mind. Jane will also be able to leave a nice legacy for her children, grandkids, and or charities of her choosing. Relying on probability-based planning worked out pretty well for Jane in this case. But you could say Jane just got lucky. The timing of her retirement was purely by chance. I personally would not want to leave something so important that I saved up my entire life for to chance. And why I wouldn't want to do that is because Jill's situation. Now let's look at what happened to Jill after retiring with that same $1 million 3 years later. Jill used that same 4% rule as her sister Jane, and as well as the same low-cost index funds. But little did she know, the timing of her retirement wasn't very good. Now understand, Jill didn't do anything wrong. All she did was retire 3 years later. As you'll see, the randomness of the sequence of returns was not on Jill's side. When she started taking income in 1999, even though the index had returned 8.91% that first year, Jill would have been better off with the safety first thinking. Losses in 2000, 2001, and 2002, and then the whopping loss in 2008 ruined the long-term health of Jill's retirement. Those investment losses, along with her $40,000 and growing distributions, caused her account value to drop to just over $316,000 just 10 years into Jill's retirement. That's a 68% reduction from her initial $1 million in savings. Even though 2008 was the last year she suffered a loss, by continuing those growing withdrawals, her account was only valued at about $238,000 by the end of 2014, just 16 years into her retirement. With 2015 being a very flat year in the index, her withdrawal of about $64,000 in that year would have left her account valued at some $220,000. Now, Jill might only have 4 or 5 years left of income before her savings are all gone. Then what? Does she go to Sister Jane and say, hey, this isn't fair? I retired 3 years later and I ended up in this position and you're in a fantastic position. Does she go back and try and find another job? How many people do we see that enter retirement and quickly realize I don't have the money I need to live the lifestyle that I wanted to live? How often do you go into a store, a grocery store, someplace, and you see somebody that's older than you working there? Do you think they're doing that because they want to be there? Or do you think they would rather be doing something better, but they need the income? Now, Jane and Jill's story only focuses on the sequence of returns. No changes in tax rates, inflation, healthcare costs, or public policy, all things that are going to affect your retirement when that time comes. The longer one lives, the larger those risks become. The question is, are you willing to risk your entire retirement savings on the belief that you can perfectly time the market? Again, you have to think to yourself, what is everyone else doing? What is everyone else's situation looking like? Why am I constantly seeing more and more people who are my age or older end up back in the workforce? The reason is because timing. Maybe they didn't think they were timing the market. Maybe they didn't know anything about sequence of returns risk, but a lack of education will lead you right back into the workforce much sooner than you expected. Our goal is to schedule a call with us, help educate you, show you the options of how to protect your money so you end up like Jane and not Jill. Go ahead and head on over to our website, legacylifeandretirement.com, if you're not already viewing this video on there. On the main page, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's all sorts of information about contacting us, setting up an appointment. At the end of the day, the information is always free. The knowledge is priceless, and what you decide to do with it is completely up to you. But I promise you, there is a better way to protect and build your retirement that is going to provide you with zero risk. If this is something you're interested in, we look forward to chatting with you soon. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we appreciate you taking the time. Have a good one.